In Spectre, Season 2 was a vast improvement over the first season because instead of having one really overly large bloated arc and then two really tiny arcs, it instead had about 3 or 4 completely reasonably sized arcs. It gets to its point so much faster in this season, and it also manages to cover more content, and it feels like more was accomplished in that time. Like, the season feels shorter, even though more stuff happened in it. It's divided into about 4 parts. The first is about a guy who's suspected of killing his ex-wife, and he has a relationship with a Yuki-onna. There is a couple who ends up living next to Rika, who I think are renting out an apartment complex that people keep killing themselves in. Forget if the doll was in this season or last season, because I watched these back to back, but there may have been 5 arcs, is what I'm saying in this one. Then there's the old lady and the cat and the Pinocchio doll, and my favorite arc of this entire one that I think I'm going to get into a little bit more is about an old man who hired a yokai back in his past to kill his wife, and he wants sort of justice to be done with that, so tries to get his kids to figure out how he killed his wife, and that just turns into a whole clusterfuck because it turns out that literally everyone was planning to kill this woman. And it's this like fun back and forth thing where you get these like constant plot twists about how all of the kids secretly hated the mom and were trying to kill her, all while the grandpa thinks that he's like behind the whole thing and he's trying to get coming to justice. Kotoko's whole gimmick is that she hates the fact that the old man was fucking around with the supernatural in the first place because it's literally her job to prevent this. So she ends up taking it upon himself to basically convince the others that he was behind it in such a way that they don't catch on that he used a supernatural entity to kill the wife. And there's some twists in that I'm purposefully leaving out just because I think it was such a fucking delight. Like, that arc was so good that I ended up actually staying up later at night just to watch it because I was so fucking enthralled and wanting to know what would happen next. And it wasn't that inconvenient because, again, the arcs in this are so much better paced than season 1 that it was only like 4 episodes and it felt appropriately paced. It might not have even been 4, it might have been 3. See, this is what I'm talking about it felt shorter probably than it actually was. And then the final one, just because I guess they had a little extra time, was just like a 1-episode thing about a guy that may or may not have killed his wife. But one thing I really appreciate is how this season expands on the relationship between Kotoko and Kuro. And a thing about that is that Kuro was very tsundere, very soon specifically, not so much dere in season 1. Whereas even though he's not as overtly like nice and doesn't say as many romantic things as he actually did in season 1, his general vibe with her, as opposed to season 1, where he was mostly like hostile and dismissive of her, is a lot more accepting and friendly. So although he's not like overtly romantic as he was in the first season, they actually end up coming off as a better couple. And Kotoko and her word choice definitely makes it clear that they've been fucking. There's a lot of fucking. The things she say in this are outrageous. And I just find it so fucking hilarious, to be honest. It's a nice shining beacon of comedy. There's also sort of less but more focus on Kuro's cousin Rika, who's basically set up to be the main antagonist of the series. And I think they're kind of building off of the disinformation war in the Steel Lady Nanase arc from season 1, because Rika is sort of in the background sending cases over to Kotoko, who's like, I don't know why she keeps doing this. This is fucking weird. And my personal theory, and obviously I have no way of knowing, is that in the Steel Lady Nanase arc, Kotoko used a series of like timelines and predictions due to Rika's Kudon powers to force her into a scenario where she couldn't win. And I think Rika's attempting to use the same strategy by causing Kotoko to solve crimes, like supernatural crimes, in such a way that Rika will be able to create her own perfect timeline that Kotoko won't be able to pull herself out of. That is my current theory. Maybe I'm giving Rika too much credit, but it does seem like the characters themselves have even vocalized how strange it is of Rika's behavior of sending cases specifically over to Kotoko, and how it's weird that she's kind of doing that. So I think that's the way they're going, and it's starting to get me more excited for what Rika's up to. She was sort of not that interesting of a figure in season 1. She had like a little bit of a mystique, but she's more effective in the background than she is as an overt antagonist. And another thing they do in this season is they start with the characters that are affected by the supernatural before bringing in Kotoko and Kuro at the end to sort of solve the problems. And the fact that we have the problems established and then have them sort of appear out of nowhere to come up with solutions gives them this sort of like ethereal, almost supernatural element to themselves, especially because in this season specifically, so many of the supernatural and the yokai are already interacting with humans. So it ends up giving our sort of main characters, when the story takes a step back from them to introduce them as solutions to the problem, instead of introducing the problem and them along the same time, it gives them a sort of inhuman feeling to them. They end up feeling almost more like monsters than the monsters the show is actually about. Season 2 basically fixed every complaint I had about season 1, and I feel like it's really starting to live up to the show's potential. I also don't think necessarily that this is the limits of what Inspector can do. I think what they have established with the characters and the setting and the premise, this show could continue to get better. Could also take a fucking nosedive into season 3. But I do think there is room for improvement, and that's saying something, because honestly, season 2 was pretty fucking good. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your envoy of hope. Bye-bye.